Good morning and welcome to the May 10th, 2018 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the agenda, there are speaker request forms to the left of the dais. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the secretary. At this time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so that the meeting is not disrupted. The public hearing on item number 1 is now opened. Approval of the April 26th Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting minutes. Karen made the motion to approve the meeting minutes, and Mike seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 2 is a variance to reduce the side yard setback from 8 foot to 5 foot for a single-family residential structure located at 1502 Racine Street. And this one is a little unique. The house was built in 1971 when the side yard setback was 5 feet. The applicant is requesting a variance so that if the house is ever removed or destroyed by 50% or more, that it could be rebuilt with a 5-foot setback. So the existing structure today is legal nonconforming, doesn't require the variance. This would be for any future reconstruction of a single-family residence on the lot. A little bit unique from what we typically see. So with that, I'll go through the slides. This shows that the property is located on the east side of Racine Street. It is currently zoned low-density residential. An aerial of the property, the house, a detached garage, and there is a shed, and we'll see some pictures of it. The applicants indicated that even though that does currently set in the setback, the shed will be removed. The future land use plan shows the property as low-density neighborhood. So this is an area that will develop and redevelop with single-family homes. The major street plan, Racine Street, is identified as a local street. Site plan of the property, and the setback that we're discussing today is this one. So the current house sits 5 foot from that, we'll call it north lot line. This shed encroaches as well, but again, that one's going away. And the applicant is requesting that if they should have to rebuild a single-family residence on that home, that they be allowed to maintain that same setback. When we looked at this for purposes of going through our criteria for a variance, we looked at the size of the lot. It's 8,712 square feet. A single-family residential lot has to have a minimum 6,500 square feet. So this lot is currently about 2,200 square feet larger than normal. And as you'll see from these site photos, there's no topographic or narrowness or unique shape of the lot that would lend itself to hit the criteria that says there's a special circumstance, such as topographic constraint or narrowness. The existing setback, and you'll see that the residence next door aligns with this one, and it's a 2-story structure. One of the criteria is that the intent of the ordinance be maintained if a variance is provided. One of the intents of the ordinance is to secure light and open space, and also to ensure that we are securing fire protection between structures to the greatest degree possible. Again, reducing the setback does not go to the intent of the ordinance, so it doesn't meet that criteria either. Looking down Racine Street, the other direction down Racine Street, across the street, looking into the site, and then that's the shed that would be removed. The last criteria that we look at is reasonable use. Could reasonable use be established on this lot if an 8-foot setback was required? Based on the size of the lot, the configuration of the lot, there are thousands of homes in our city that would have been built with that minimum setback being provided and still lay out the site so that reasonable use of the property can be met. So based on the fact that the variance does not meet the criteria set forward, we are recommending that it be denied. Just as a reminder, the existing home is fine. It's only if it were to be rebuilt because it was removed or destroyed by 50% or more that the variance is being sought. If you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer them. And the applicant is in the audience today and would like to speak to the item.
Thank you, Vicki. I don't have any questions up from the commission right now, so I'll call Felix Philip Young up to the microphone if you'd like to speak on this item. Vicki, can you direct him to the right location?
And Felix, if you just say your name and address for the record.
My name is Felix Young, 1502 Racine Street, and I request this variance so that I can sell the house. It right now is non-conforming, and the insurance companies and the secondary mortgage people will not finance it or insure it because if, like was stated before, if it's 50% damaged some way or another, they could not rebuild on the same footprint. And I need the variance in order to override that situation. Any questions?
Thank you. I don't see any questions from the commission on this. I guess I'll start with one for staff. In a situation like this surely can't be the first time where we've had a similar situation where the transfer of property is affected by a change in the codes over time.
You're correct, Mr. Chair. I, too, am very confused by this. We have received hundreds and hundreds of zoning letter requests from banks that want to know, could a use continue on a property if the structure was damaged, or could it be rebuilt? And so long as it's reasonable that the structure could be built, we make that very clear in our zoning letter of compliance, similar to the presentation I just made, citing that it's reasonable that a single-family structure of this size or larger could be built on that property, meeting all of the necessary setbacks and land area regulations. And so this is a new one for us. I've not had to come about this. Typically what happens, the issue is if there's a duplex that is illegal on a property or legal non-conforming, one of those two, if that structure were to burn down or be damaged by 50% or more, then the use couldn't be reestablished, but the structure could be built. And I'm just wondering if it's not going to take better communication between the city and the mortgage companies, or in this case, his insurance company, to give that assurance that there's nothing prohibiting a single-family structure from being rebuilt on this site.
Thanks, Vicki. Karen.
Thank you. This is a dilemma, I think, for us up here because we want to be able to help this gentleman and so he can sell his house. I recently talked to a banker, and I know that the banking laws have changed considerably in the last year or so. I don't know exactly when, but I know they want a lot more data and a lot more information before they do anything. And I don't need to go into why I was there, but I know that's a struggle for a lot of people. Is there some way that maybe this can be continued so that we can visit with the bankers and they can come in and explain to us why they can't issue or a mortgage company why they can't issue a reasonable loan to somebody because of this? I mean, I know we've done this in the past, and it makes sense from a zoning perspective that there's plenty of room to do all that, you know, to rebuild a house up there or put a new house on there. And if we're going to try to make the laws compatible for everybody, you've got to figure out why things have changed. And that's just a thought, if we could do something like that. I don't know how that affects him, but if he can't sell his house now, something's got to change, I would think.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Vicki?
Twofold. One, I want to refer to Wade Nyberg. Wade, for those of you that don't know, is the assistant city attorney that's been assigned to our department, so he'll be joining us now at these meetings. And also to the applicant to see if he thinks a representative from his bank or insurance company would be willing to come forward and speak. So if those two things, again, we've got set criteria by state law that we've got to review, and I don't know what that input would change in our review of that criteria, but I'll defer to Wade, and then maybe if we could get the applicant's take on whether or not a representative could come forward.
Mr. Chairman.
Wade?
So this is really an odd situation, because this is the point of a legal nonconforming, is we change our setbacks and we say, well, you're okay for now because that's how it was built. You were, excuse me, you were built under the rules at the time, and so we're not going to make you tear down your house and build a new one. But at the time when it's damaged, 50% or more, or it becomes economically feasible to tear it down and build something new, then you have to meet our 8-foot setback. I mean, that's the reason we have legal nonconforming. And so this, I don't know if it would be unprecedented to do this prospectively like that, but it would definitely be out of the ordinary, and it doesn't, as staff said earlier, it doesn't meet any of our requirements for variance. I'm looking at the criteria, so I get exactly what Commissioner Bowman is saying. Like, you want to be able to help him out, and you don't want to hold up his sale or his use of his property. But that's sort of the point, is that it's fine as it is, and there's not really a need for a variance as is, because it's legal nonconforming. We're looking at a prospective application of a variance at some point in the future for something that may or may not happen. So it's a tough situation, but as it is right now, it doesn't meet state law or city ordinance criteria. And I would like to hear from the bank as well, I guess, if they're looking at a regulation or something that, because I don't think our ordinances or our state law is out of the ordinary. I think it happens in cities all over the country, so I would like to hear more about it, I guess.
Thank you, Wade. Galen?
Thank you. Just echoing the other comments, again, we would like to help out the applicant here, but I just don't see any way to justify this. There's plenty of room to rebuild 3 feet over, get into that driveway a little bit, and there's just no way. I don't think we can justify this right now, given our criteria. But I guess another question is, in that surrounding neighborhood, are there 5-foot setbacks on all the other houses? Is that pretty common in that area? And could it be for Vicki, or actually, if John Roberts wants to jump in and give some insight as a realtor perspective, that's fine too.
Mr. Chair, there are several structures in that neighborhood that have 5-foot setbacks because of the fact that they were built at the same time for the most part, and that was the setback of the day. So I think that when you look at it, you'll see it, but even though we don't have complete rebuilds often in these residential neighborhoods, for many, many years, people continue to restore homes, and that legal nonconformity is maintained throughout the life of that structure. But whenever they do have to be rebuilt from scratch or because of a 50% or more damage, it's very common that they would come in and meet that setback. And just on behalf of the applicant, I don't think that there's anything that he anticipated that he needed to request the variance. He's just trying to sell his house. And that's the frustration, is he's getting caught in between what we legally look at and what the banks are legally requiring. And I do think that it is of extreme importance that perhaps we have some communication with the banks to see how their laws changed that could impact a lot of people in this community.
Yeah, I'd appreciate John's comments as well.
Thank you very much. I'll deal with the first one, and Vicki dealt with it. In that neighborhood, yes, there's a lot, but it's not just that neighborhood. North Rapid, there's a lot. Just from memory, I believe, other than the home next to him, there's 3 to the north that don't fit our current setbacks. Probably along that street itself, in the 3 blocks, there's got to be 12 to 16, and that's just on one street in North Rapid. Now, this is the first that I've heard of this. I was kind of surprised when I was reading through this. And just a guess from being in the industry, and I know that the mortgage companies are tightening up. There's a lot of things that are changing right now. But, you know, a home doesn't necessarily have to, a home can be destroyed more than 50% and still be rebuildable. And that's probably where the mortgage company is looking at it, because what if it was 60% and the insurance company says, we'll rebuild this house, but we won't move it. You know, we'll rebuild the existing structure. So then the homeowner's in the middle, stuck in the middle of it. Of course, the mortgage company's stuck in the middle of it. And the insurance company, anybody that's ever dealt with an insurance company on a fire, it can be a little bit difficult. But I'm the same way. I'd love to talk to some of the mortgage companies, and when I leave here, I probably will. But I think for you, if you can delay this action, I think it's probably a good idea to speak to some of the mortgage companies, because if there's some new regulations coming down the line, literally we have thousands of these homes in Rapid City. So, you know, this could become very problematic very quickly if something changed in the mortgage industry.
Thanks, John. Rachel.
Yeah, you know, this is new to me, and obviously, as everyone's saying, this is going to be a big issue because we have so many homes. You know, it seems crazy to me that this mortgage company is putting this guy through this. I'm reading through this, you know, the project, the application documents, and the realtor, or no, the mortgage guy, he's saying that this is the way it's been for 17 years in his career. So I don't think this is regard to a new law. I think this is maybe how this guy practices. But I'm wondering, how long can we push this off? And, you know, both from the Planning Commission standpoint and from your standpoint, sir, how soon do you think you could get your mortgage person to talk to us, or what kind of timeline do you think would be best so that we could get this resolved?
Well, I've already lost 2 buyers because of this. So as soon as it could get pushed through, it'd be beneficial to me.
Galen?
My preference would be not to have necessarily someone from the insurance company or mortgage company come here to a meeting, but just get this issue resolved with staff and try to work out an agreement that way. I don't think it's necessary that they come to a meeting and talk to us about this unless we think it's necessary, but I'd rather just see them get this figured out and explain that this is still a legal home when there's plenty of room to rebuild with very minimal change when you think about just scooting over 3 feet. So that would be my preference.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Vicki.
I echo Galen's statement. I think it might be better if planning staff works with the attorney's office and we reach out to this applicant's mortgage representative and have an in-depth conversation, get informed. Karen references that she's spoken with the banker and that there are new regulations, so finding out what that is. Again, because we have so many of these, this is the only one that's, to my knowledge, been an issue, and we're writing zoning letters of compliance almost daily, and most mortgage companies take that letter. So maybe there's some education and communication on this particular one, and then we could come back in 2 weeks and provide you with whatever information that we've obtained, and that could assist you in making your decision.
Justin?
Thank you. I guess one thing to keep in mind, and maybe this is part of what the city needs to look at with the 50% rule, because if the thing burns to the ground, it has a basement, I assume?
Yes, it does.
If the structure burns to the ground, the foundation's still sitting where it's sitting. And the insurance company would come rebuild it off the same foundation, most likely. Well, that's where your cost is at, to move it, to get the setback off. So, you know, you can say, I can move a shed 3 feet. Yeah, you can move a shed 3 feet easily. A house with the foundation and a basement is not that easy. And so that's where my guess is the insurance company is looking at it and going, half the house burns on the inside, and you gotta get rid of the kitchen and the living room and the fixtures. That's 50% value. Well, it's not gonna just cost me 50% of the cost of the house to rebuild it. It's gonna cost me the entire cost of a new house, because you've gotta take the foundation out and move it over. So my guess is that may be part of the issue from the insurance company. And so maybe it's a way that we need to look at it, that the 50% rule it can't be looked at just as a strict 50%, because it's more than that if that were to happen. So I mean, I agree with everybody's statements, and it's hard to just give the variance and go. I don't really know that that's the issue. Unfortunately, it's not even his lender or insurance company, it's the buyers, whoever those are. So it's probably a couple different ones to date. But I think that's probably the issue is it's not just a simple move over 3 feet. You're basically rebuilding the entire house foundation up. So I think that's part of the conversation. I think I agree with this, the way to move forward is to have the conversations aside from this meeting, but figure out what that needs to look like, and then I think we can go. So my thoughts. Thanks.
Kurt?
Yeah, and, you know, what Justin says, that, you know, maybe there is some confusion with the way the zoning ordinance is written and how the mortgage companies are interpreting it. It might require an amendment to the zoning ordinance to clear it up somehow, you know, whether it be, you know, something like, you know, if the foundation is still buildable, you can, you know, because of a disaster, you can still build there, something like that. But right now, it looks like the mortgage companies are taking a hard stance on how to interpret the zoning regulations. So we might have to look at that aspect too. And I don't know, you know, how long something like that would take. My guess is, you know, you're looking at a couple months to get a amendment. So that's all I have.
I guess I'd like to add one thing. If we are taking a 2-week period to research this, transfer of property is incredibly important, and it may not fit into one thing we have of the 4 in the zoning Board of Adjustment rules for granting variances, but that, I mean, that's foundational to our property structure in our city. So I guess I'd ask Wade if there's to consider that part of this, if there is something that comes up in this research that would block the transfer of property. I think we need to know about that and consider that within our existing framework. Galen?
I was just going to make the motion that we continue this for 2 weeks to the next meeting.
Galen made the motion to continue this for 2 weeks until, what's the date? I apologize, the 24th?
Correct.
And Rachel seconded that motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Kurt?
And that's also including looking at what might have to be changed either in the criteria for granting setback variances or amending the zoning ordinance. I mean, when you talk about continuing it to look at just, you know, what the mortgage companies are saying, I think we need to add that we'll also look into ways to get around that.
Would that make sense to Galen and Rachel? Okay. Vicky?
So I would like to just suggest that you let staff take the lead on whether or not the ordinance needs to be amended. I think the intent here would be to get this thing through for a decision one way or the other with the applicant. We'll look at the legal ramifications. The part of the ordinance that would need to be amended would not be the variance section. It's a whole separate chapter within 17, and that would be months and months of work to do. He can't be put through that. So I think for the purposes of his, we need to get the information back and see what is needed in order to resolve the issue with the bank so that the transfer of his property can go forward. And then we'll look at the broader spectrum as we review with more representatives of the industry what some of the other issues are. So if we're going to tackle that issue, we probably need to look at it from a broader perspective and not take a quick change to it, because our legal nonconforming section is extremely difficult to revise without having repercussions in other areas of the community. So we've tried to amend it over the years many, many times, and it still stands the way it has since the day I started here.
That's a good comment. Thank you. Karen?
Thank you. I think that's a good suggestion, Vicki. I think not just talking to a banker, but a mortgage company and an insurance company, something so we can get a broad spectrum of what's happening out in that industry, and so we have a better idea of what we're going to be dealing with now or in the future. I'd hate to say deny this and then he still can't sell his house, but you know, I also hate to approve it and set a precedent that down the road we need to make sure there's fire protection and stuff between all the buildings and that kind of thing. That's what we have ordinances for, so thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Vicki?
As Mr. Roberts pointed out, we have thousands of homes in this situation. They'll all eventually sell. If the precedent is established that a variance can be granted because of this situation, you folks are going to get very busy.
Yes. Any further discussion on the motion to continue until May 24th? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. That's our last item on the Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Rachel made the motion to adjourn and Galen seconded that motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We will now commence the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for May 10th, 2018. Again, if anybody wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda, please fill out a speaker request form and give it to the staff along the left wall. And if you have a cell phone, again, please take your calls out in the hallway. Items 1 through 7 have been placed on the consent calendar and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the City Council. The City Council will make the final decision with the exception of the following items. Item 4, 18 PD 014. Item 5, 18 PD 016. Item 6, 18 PD 017. And item 7, 18 UR 003. The Rapid City Planning Commission's actions on these items are final unless any party appeals that decision to the City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 7 that the staff would like to remove? Any items 1 through 7 that the Planning Commission would like to remove? And are there any items 1 through 7 that any audience member would like to remove? I'd look for a motion then to approve items 1 through 7 in accordance with staff recommendations. Mike made the motion to approve items 1 through 7 per staff recommendations. Rachel seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Any further items today? All right. Galen made the motion to adjourn.
I just wanted to make
Vince seconded that. Oh, we have a late coming item.
Sorry, I didn't know we were ready for adjournment yet. I just wanted to make an announcement that we have scheduled a meeting on Thursday, July the 12th, which will be a joint workshop between the City Council and Planning Commission. The purpose of the meeting is to review our criteria manual and standard specifications, just to give greater understanding as to what they are, and also a little background history why we have them, what the purpose is, what the impact might be if we don't follow them, some philosophy over granting exceptions, what that does and such. So it'll be an informational and a discussion type workshop where it'll be more of a roundtable session. We'll have it upstairs in the third floor conference room. But we would like to have all of the Planning Commission and City Council be in attendance as much as we can get. So July the 12th at 6:30 p.m. I will never schedule a 6:30 a.m. meeting.
We're kind of a morning group here, so you might be offending us.
I'm still trying to get used to that. We didn't do that in Utah.
All right, well, thank you for that plug. We'll hope everybody gets that on their calendars. I had a motion on the floor from Mike, I think, or Galen. I don't know. I forgot. We're going to go Mike and Galen to adjourn. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye.